And welcome everyone to Dev Insight. Two of these, if you've been watching, two of these are the exact same. It's Gore. I forgot my own name.
Right, Gore, we're talking for an hour.
It's been a long day already.
This is what happens when we go on a break for too long.
We should swap seats.
I start fumbling everything. Yeah, let you host this one, J-Mac. But we're joined now by the better minds that I had hinted at. We've got Lermy and we've got Isiah.
Oh, it's good.
We'll be jumping in. And we're going to be talking, obviously, a lot about patch notes from yesterday, things that came in. And I guess other questions, like it doesn't have to be about the patch, but like it probably is smarter if it is, because like that's new and fresh.
Might as well, right?
So as you can see, they've got little iPads.
Yeah.
Those all have chat on them.
We have chat.
I've got my laptop. It also has chat on them. So if you ask questions...
Look at the chat. What's going on, chat?
What's going on, chat? You know what? This is going to be talking with chat for an hour. Which I guess that is what Dev Insight is. But it's like with smarter, more eloquent
We
questions.
are devs, and we give insight. That's the point of the show.
What I'd love, though, is like if we start getting... like life questions, not Smite questions. Like it's not the first thing that came to mind.
Well, you have an insight into the dev, not necessarily the development.
Yeah, that'd be insight in like what your life is like.
Like a double
like if I'm preparing the best ramen, what's the way to do it? Like, and I don't know if anyone has opinions on that. But that can be a legitimate question. I don't know why. It's because we have ramen for lunch today.
Yeah, we had ramen for lunch. 100%.
It's like, why is ramen on the mind? I'm going to ask the first one because we'll let chat get their questions in. I just want to know, like, outside, like, was it community sentiment or what else around Soul Surges that kind of got those taken away?
Yeah, generally it was a lot of community sentiment because we did try it and we definitely understood the feedback of, just do X, Y, and Z, but we found that each individual portion of the Soul Surge had its own, like, group of, I won't say haters, I'll say dislikers.
Yes.
So we're like, well, if everyone doesn't like one part of it and the whole group collectively doesn't like the whole thing, then we can probably just put it back in the tank, rework it up for maybe the future. Even if we don't find a solution that we love, maybe it'll just sit on the shelf.
I think, and the thing I've learned playing Smite for 10 years, I guess 11, oh my god, it's 2023, isn't it? Wow. Is the fact that there's no feature that ever disappears, that's ever gone forever.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna fester. Sometimes it comes back as something different, but sometimes it stays the same. I also I'm not gonna call that out. Never mind. It highlighted because they mentioned me and it made me feel good. But that's you know who you are.
You have some Gore enjoyers in chat.
Exactly one Gore enjoyer in chat. And you're officially my favorite. But we do have a question ready, and so we can bring that one up and ask. And this is actually one that I was going to bring up. Is there a reason that Toph was chosen for Scylla specifically as a skin?
I don't know 100%. This is just my conjecture based on what I know about how the process works. So I'm not an animator. I'm not a marketing, knower of like why specifically Scylla or like how that would sell. I do know that it is a lot easier to animate a small girl as a small girl versus a small girl as a buff woman.
Yes.
Very, very different.
There's like a height difference.
Yes.
That being said, and Nickelodeon, get at us. The island or the Ember Island players.
I was just saying the same exact one.
Where it's just a buff
I've
dude
seen Hercules.
playing Toph. That'd be kind of sick.
Hercules.
Okay.
And,
That'd be a good
I want to piggyback off what Lermy was saying too. Toph has been requested ever since the OG Avatar crossover, and Toph Scylla was actually one of the most suggested things that we had gotten.
Really?
Since OGs. Yeah,
I remember watching
suggested for a long time.
Fan art. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of I see people just yell, okay, now do this, this, and this. I never see like a god comment.
Wow, thanks.
They're like, cool, you added this. Okay, so now where's Toph? And like now there's Toph. Everyone's like, okay, so like what about the rest of the crew? Like where are they? When are they coming?
I see the comments. Everyone wants Katara and Sokka. We got to get the full team.
And here's the thing. Here's what I'm going to tell you. At home, if you buy the skins, then that looks real good when we can go to Nickelodeon and say, hey. Look how great these skins have been doing. You want more? You got to support the ones that are there. So
that's with everything, right? Like if we see players are enjoying what we're putting out, we want to
pursue more of that. Yeah. That's the reason. Like you've got the run.exe skin was like the first for Mercury, and it spawned a whole line of skins because it was so enjoyed. And so there's if you like them, support them, and maybe you'll get more, and maybe. Next time it'll be like a buff Ember Island players guy as Hercules or Terra. That's none of us are involved in the conversations, but if you're listening,
right?
Nickelodeon, if you're out there hearing us.
I do want to know, and this one, I don't know if we pulled this one or not, but it's just someone asked, and I'm kind of curious, because Anubis got the treatment earlier this year with like the no longer self-rooting in the one. Someone was asking, is that ever a possibility that Ymir will have some of his abilities make it so he can run with them? And I guess the only one that would really work on is the freeze, right?
Yeah. It's tough, right? Because Anubis is a very, very unique case. This does not happen often because Anubis, in terms of Smite age, is ancient. He is old in terms of like his, actual model, his rig, his animations, all that stuff. Very, very old. It was very surprising to us when we found out that when Anubis uses his locus, that he is only animating his upper half. And usually we're like, okay, if he's rooted, like, that's kind of surprising to me. You'd probably think it'd be the whole posture. But because it was only the upper half, we could have our tech artists do some really cool jank, for lack of a better term.
If it works, it works.
Combo the animations together so that he could play his walking animation and the top animation that was actually there. But we don't necessarily know without actually going in and digging into it and trying to like figure out, hey, like, how is this actually made? To know if we can do any of that other stuff. That's not even like accounting for, the gameplay outside of it. Because Anubis, it kind of makes sense because it's a channeled ability, right? Ymir, it's a little bit weirder because it's a one-time cone effect. So I mean, I would say it's not impossible. I would say it's unlikely just due to the age of the character, but you never know because, again, Anubis had that same problem. But miracles happen, I guess.
That's the other thing. You after a while, because like the game's been getting developed for so long that sometimes, like, Lermy, you're gonna go back and you could literally work on a god that no one here knows the person who was working on it because it's been that
very
long.
true. Yeah.
Like, and so some of the original gods, like, you say like, hey, we found out this weird thing with Anubis. I'm like, that sounds right though. Like, there were things. Whenever you're programming anything, there's a certain point where you're like, I don't know what this is, but when I delete it, it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. It's all commented out. It literally isn't doing anything. But if it's not there, everything stops working, so it's still there. And there's a lot of that with some of the older gods. Like, I can't remember. I think there's something with like Ra blind at one point.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's the story that Aggro likes to tell. Is that
it's like threaded.
So this is a story from Aggro, so I might be paraphrasing, but when Aggro was working on eShell, we hadn't had another blind in the game, right? So we needed to figure out how do we actually make a blind in code. And so he was working with programmers to figure out how this actually works, and they were like, okay, we can just like copy Ra blind. And they copied Ra blind, and it didn't work, and they were like, why doesn't this work? We literally just copied it.
Copy paste.
So they had to go through and actually dissect like what's doing what in like his actual code, and they were like, I don't know how this is working. I can't tell you why this works, but it just works.
It just does.
I think there's some gods that are just untouchable in like certain aspects and will never get like rekitted, and that's why because sometimes you touch it and you're like, what's going on here?
Okay, but that also like brings up a really fun part of my job that I've gotten a chance to like work through recently. Like, the like Zeus change where he got attack speed and movement speed and things like that. Doing that is so exploratory, and those like going through and figuring out like, if I change this number that just is like here and ambiguous, like what happens? Like what can I do with just changing a couple of values? Because in our database, we have like filters and we have like drop downs of different like categories, I guess you could call them, of like, this thing is a projectile or this thing is an instant ranged hit, or like changing those things and just seeing like what they do, and if like the character still works changing that, like that is a super fun part about my job. I love doing those kind of exploratory like research things, like, okay, how can I do this without like needing to say, hey programming, can you like break it from the inside out? I can just go, I'm going to break it and it's going to be jank, but it will be cool.
When we're done, you're gonna love it.
Exactly.
For the next like 2 weeks, you're gonna hate me, but once it's like finalized and tested,
I'm like, hey Chaos, can you tell me like what this number does? And he's like searching through the code. Oh, it does this. Okay, I understand.
I'm gonna change that. Well, and that's the thing that's I think always really interesting design wise, especially like the eShell thing, is because then you go back and you're like, the people that made Ra had no idea that 10 years later the code that makes Ra was still being used. So it is, I mean, like, it's I think an impressive monument to the longevity of Smite, because the game's been fantastic, but also it's a fun challenge for you.
It's super cool. And I think just like in general, considering like how many hands have been on Smite throughout the years, it's just like such a like humbling
Yeah.
like thought, I guess.
It's a living product, and
Yeah.
like in more than just the way of like games as a service. Like it's literally a living product.
Yeah.
I think we have another one that another question
Another one.
lined up, and there's one I keep seeing someone repeat in chat that is not going to get said, my guy. I'm going to go ahead and tell you. What was the reason Soul Surge got removed? You've got other ideas in mind to replace it, because we had talked a little bit about why it got removed a little bit earlier. It means
Yeah.
to, like fan sentiment, stuff like that. But is there a next thing?
I mean, there's always the next
yeah,
thing.
there's always the next thing.
We're always cooking.
Let's just say we got a new season coming up relatively soon. So
Introducing
keep that in
Soul
mind.
Surge 2.
Soul Surge
Electric
2.
Boogaloo.
Electric Boogaloo,
It's just
yeah.
purple this time.
It's purple, and now we aren't saying Electric Boogaloo for funsies. It makes you dance like a CC.
You're
It activates
popping
your
and
dancing
like
electrified.
breakdancing.
Oh yeah, but to realistically answer the question, there's always something new. I wouldn't say that we are looking to directly replace it in terms of functionality, but we're always looking for new things to add, new systems to work with, new mechanics for players to try. So keep an eye out for those
Yeah,
things.
and a new
There's always
season
more.
is the perfect place to introduce stuff.
Yeah. That's kind of like a mini like subject, right? It's like people will talk about, oh, this patch kind of felt sort of small. Well, the way that we're structuring things this year with the 4 seasons, we got to make sure that those season patches really feel big, right? So sometimes during the in-between patches, we're working ahead, right? We're working on the season patch, while other things are coming up, right? So even if like a patch feels kind of small, or you're like, hey, the new season patch is really big, but why isn't this patch really big? Well, that's because we're cooking, okay? So let
the next
us
patch
cook
is
a
going
little
to
bit.
be really big.
Exactly.
And you had something.
Yeah.
The thing I was going to say was a bad idea anyway, so you should definitely just jump on the grenade for me, please.
Yeah, this isn't one in chat, but this is one I've kind of been wondering about, maybe the balance aspect that you can kind of answer. So a lot of times you look at God performance and say, okay, well, this ability is hitting maybe a little bit too hard. We tone this back, or maybe this passive needs to be a little bit buff. But what goes into maybe the idea and the thought process of buffing the base, like the base numbers of a God, like say their HP, their mana pools, their HP5 or MP5? What are some of like the thought process that go there versus, maybe buffing another aspect of their kit?
It's tough, right? Because sometimes it's really obvious to us where we can like look in we have a sheet basically of every single character's base stats in the game, and it's ordered by class, it's ordered by like the level of each of them, and they each have like little different colors like saying like what rank they are in their class. So in this sheet, sometimes we'll go to that sheet and be like, okay, how are they sitting? If we don't necessarily know a good direction to go, that'll kind of be a nice backup. Or like maybe let's say, I don't know, I'm pulling a random example. This has nothing to do with anything that's coming up. Just a disclaimer. Just a disclaimer.
Love, yeah.
Let's say Kabrakin is like having mana problems. I don't know. He's just having problems. And we're like, okay, instead of lowering his mana cost, like what does his MP5 look like? Does he need some extra MP5 or something like that? Like that's kind of another option for us to go to. That is kind of a place for us that will hit everything instead of just being like, hey, maybe this ability needs it. Maybe Tremors needs to go down, or the ultimate needs to go up, or anything like that. Like we don't have to be very specific about it. We can just say, here's a little extra. Don't have to think about it too hard.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to tweak. And that's actually the thing I think that is most, again, another thing that's really impressive to me, because my brain, small, I think cooldown numbers, what does this do?
Yeah.
The fact, like, augmenting health, augmenting the HP5, augmenting how much health you get per level, like, those numbers seem like if I read that in a patch notes, I'm again kind of dumb brain looking at it like don't even change anything, and then it's one of the most massive changes that you could ever feel. Like it changes so much in some of those aspects. So I'm thinking of those numbers.
It is kind of like perception as well, because you don't really think about it that much. It's the same thing with like how the cooldowns of your main 3 abilities are probably the most impactful changes you could have on any character, adjusting those cooldowns. But people will say, you took 1 second off of Impale? That changes nothing.
It's nothing.
Except the thing is, think of how much you're using Impale in one game. How much you're using that ability? So much.
Now you're losing it.
So often. Yeah, so it'd be
every
a lot,
60 impales that you've now thrown, that's a whole minute that you've saved. That's wild. That's a really dumb way to put it on my part, but I did it anyway, and I'll save myself because we have a question. I'm sorry.
You're good. That is the question.
There was just a look from Lermy. I'm like, I can't tell if this is judging or not.
This is what
I and many others have one serious inquiries about bringing Clash and Siege into the rotation, rotating it out with Slash and the 2 other game modes, so having it like I guess, kind of like match of the day, except it's like, hey, today is Slash, Clash, Siege, Slash, Clash, Siege, etc., etc. Is that ever anything that comes up in conversation?
Absolutely. Yeah, we brought back Siege as a part of the match of the day rotation for special events and stuff like that. Definitely not opposed to bringing Clash back either. I know it's another mode that people are wanting to play, so definitely look into it. And in terms of adding it to like the consistent match of the day rotation, we like to be a little bit careful with that, just because we have a structure that we follow with match of the days, and we've seen that if we switch things up, and the people who main a mode of the day on a specific day log in and their mode is not live, they are upset. So it's like we have to kind of balance that too with like figuring out, when's the best time to slot in these new modes? Is it a temporary thing, or do we change the rotation entirely? We want to make sure your Omnipotence mains, your all-out Assault mains, your cooldowns run over mains still have a chance to play those, matches and those game modes every week. But always looking to add some things into the rotation and mix things up.
I'm going to take this question and completely reword it so it's not as like aggressive. But what was the thought process behind adding Fire Giant to Arena?
That's a great question. I think when it comes down to it, we were like, how do we spice up Arena? How do we take some stuff that we have and like introduce a new way of playing Smite that people in Arena don't get to experience very much? Because I can tell you, I play a lot of Arena. I have almost 4,000 Arena matches.
My God.
And people...
So that's where all that diamond is coming from.
And that's the lowest count that she has.
No, that's my highest one. But people in Arena like have a very specific way of playing it, right? And it's kind of like an anomaly on its own, Arena should not work, but it does. If you're playing Arena to maximum efficiency, you're sitting in base and clearing. Like, you're not fighting ever. But it just works, right? So we were like, can we spice up this formula? Make it a little bit more fun. Make it a little bit more creative, almost in some ways. And, like, objectives is, like, one big thing that people can be afraid of going into other modes. Even in Joust, people are afraid of the Bull Demon King, right?
Yeah.
So how do we introduce it to players in a way that is still familiar, but can be fun, right? So I think having the Fire Giant pop up with the extra like handicap of, okay, if you like don't want to sit there in the Fire Giant pit, you can just fling the Pyroclast and you can stay out of the pit. You don't have to.
I love those Pyroclasts.
You don't have to fight in there. But we want to encourage people to be less afraid of objectives at the end of the day, because they are there to help you end the game. And even though they're really big and scary, I mean, that new Fire Giant for this year is terrifying, right? Yeah. But he is there to help you at the end of the day. You just have to learn to play around him.
And I'm going to say this because I also I like playing Arena. I don't think I have that many games on Arena, and so maybe that's on me.
That's fair, man. That's fair.
It is so fun. Because there's and maybe this is like the ADHD in me speaking, but like there's a certain point in an Arena game where I'm kind of like, okay, I'm just going to go do the same thing, I guess. Like, I'm going to walk out, here's a wave, there's a wave, we're going to clear it. Either we're going to fight or we're not, and that's the next, 2 minutes, and then reset. And so this added not just the Pyroclasts, which are super fun, and I cannot understate that. But having the Fire Giant in there, and specifically like having that buff that it's going to give you, the changes that it makes, like it incentivizes a lot more. And I think it's good for people like me.
Yeah, it just mixes up the gameplay a little bit, right? Yeah. Because you hit that 8-minute mark and you're like, okay, I'm not just fighting other people now. I've got to deal with this thing in the middle of the arena. But we have also got to deal with the enemy players. It's like adding a third team into the mix, kind of, because it's a little bit chaotic.
He hurts.
Yes, he does hurt. That's for sure. But the most fun part, I think, of that is when just all of the Pyroclasts are flinging around. And I think the Secure is honestly a really cool part of it, too. Which is like, everyone is looking at the same thing, and you're like, how can I play around this moment? Like, that moment is just so fun.
And the thing that really, like, I loved the most, it's so different from a Conquest Fire Giant fight. Yeah. Right? Because, like, in Conquest, you've got the wall, tiny opening, and then an opening, but this opening goes to a wall, right? Like, there's not a lot of space to work with. You're in Arena, like, they can come anywhere.
And you've got minion waves going down the center.
Jumping in on the fun.
We had a bug in one playtest where a minion secured the Fire Giant.
That's good.
And then we were like, that doesn't typically happen in Conquest. We have to fix that, and then we fixed it.
That's so good.
Can I ask what happened? Did the minion get CC immunity?
No, the minion got nothing, but technically it went to, so the minions are on their own
like their own little
what's called task force. So like you as like someone on order is on a task force and someone on chaos on a task force, and like they're on their own separate task forces, right? So it did go to the task force that the minions were on, but no one was on that task force, right? So
you imagine minions running at you with FG buff, like
they're all CC immune and they insta die.
Oni minions, get them out of here. Fire minions,
right?
they're
Like
nothing compared to this
they
guy.
form a new one. There's a whole new ticket count that pops up, and now you're fighting against just them because they're like Oni enhanced strength. It almost reminds me of an old bug that used to be in the game with Morgan and Ganesh. If you, as Morgan, turn into a Ganesh, and the two of you are the only one around to kill fire, nobody gets the buff because the Ganesh passive would just keep bouncing it until eventually
that's so
nothing would
funny.
happen there. But no, I actually like that you brought up that Arena's an anomaly because I've been playing the game since the open beta time, and Arena was always kind of my go-to. Just, hey, I got 15-20 minutes to kill. I'm going to go play Arena real quick. And the fact that there is essentially an established meta in Arena where you jump in any game that you play, you're going to start at your blue, then do your red, then
Who
do your
decided
purple.
that, by the way?
I don't know who decided that. It just happened out of nowhere. That's how people did it, and that's how it still is 10 years later. The only time you see difference is when you have like aggro in your game, and he's like, I'm going to go invade
Triple-double.
their blue buff right now, triple double to start
swear.
the game. But even then after that, kind of bringing up the idea of, the most optimal style of play was sitting back, just kind of farming up. That was kind of the old ranked Arena style of mode, and is all, in all honesty, in my opinion, one of the reasons I'm glad that ranked Arena was not around, because it was just a sit around for 20, farm up minions, and that was when you had to last hit minions. You didn't get the assist kind of credit towards it these days. And then it just reminds me of the Arena tournament that happened. I think it was the Alienware Arena tournament where I believe it was Lassus's team, Dignitas at that team, jumped in to play at that one.
Oh my God.
And they just rolled through everybody. And like they all have like a collective like 100 games of Arena between the entire team. And they're playing against like the top ranked Arena players. And the Arena guys are just getting rolled over. So it just kind of does show that sometimes you can just mechanics diff if you are better. But like
Just run it down,
Apparently,
Run it
it
down,
may be
have some
rooted
fun.
in the tutorial. Because apparently the tutorial has you first go over to the left.
real established that.
Oh, look at us.
So there you go. Maybe we accidentally introduced the meta.
I'm about to say we introduced it and then we like solidified it with the tutorial.
There you go. Well, I do think we have one more question available. And not as in one more and that's it. Just another one that's available on the list. Are there any updates on clans, including clan rewards and skins?
At this time, no, there's no updates to say. We definitely understand that the community is very what's the word I'm looking for?
Invested.
Yeah, invested in the idea of clans, and we hear that for sure, and that's why we're trying to do a bunch of things to encourage people to be social and engage with each other. A lot of that stuff, like the recommended friends list, suggested friends, and things like that.
Party up events.
Yes, the what is it? At the end of the game, you get the accolades, and then party up from there. Like, we want people to play together because playing Smite with friends is just fun, right? You want to make friends in Smite. But we felt like the clan
friends.
system just
Pretty cool.
wasn't able to work for a variety of reasons at this point in time. So I don't have any updates on that right now. But yeah, we definitely understand the idea behind it and the core thought of like, I would like to play with friends. I want to make friends. I want to have like my own little group that like has a place, but we are looking for other solutions in that regard.
Yeah, I'll be honest though, I'm okay because I was the leader of my clan, but Katie passed me in clan XP, and that made me feel bad because like it's like Gormizer with like a star next to it or whatever the symbol was, and I was like fourth on the list, and I'm like,
I'm supposed to be the leader. What's going
guys,
on? Like,
come on.
Let that happen.
This one, I think we had another one lined up, and maybe it's the one that I was going to ask, so we can go ahead and see. Oh, are we looking into other pantheons, any other pantheons, or adding more of some of the less explored pantheons? And I know an answer to this. Instead, I'll let you, answer it.
I can't say. It's always a possibility, but I cannot
There's
say.
always going to be room to explore.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly where it is.
Yeah.
That's always the answer. You're going to get to that question. And guess what? We've answered it a lot. That's the thing that's really fun though, going back, when the Japanese Pantheon was introduced and what we added,
That was,
Aaron, adding Cthulhu,
first-
that only has
Yeah.
one.
Like new Pantheon and from what I can recall, the Japanese Pantheon was the first big we are adding.
yeah.
new Pantheon.
That was what,
Here's
season
Season
3?
3.
I want to ask a technical question about it. Is there anything obviously there's you have to add the art and stuff like
Yeah.
that and changing, but is there anything adding a new pantheon behind the scenes other than that stuff that makes it really difficult?
No, it's like a drop down thing, so we just add another thing to drop down, and that works. But it would be like adding an icon, adding a flag. We have a ward skin that would need to be updated. Like there's a couple other like small bits here and there,
especially things that you wouldn't think of,
right? Yeah,
add
like
up,
cosmetic kind of stuff.
But it's not like actually technically hard to do it. It's just that it comes with a lot of art debt.
Yeah,
so there would be that to address.
Well, keep your eyes open. Every new god could be something new.
Yeah.
Which I guess is the whole.
That's the point.
It's going to have, guess what? A new kit,
right?
A new god itself. And whether or not a new pantheon comes with it, you have to wait and see. Yeah. Where's the one I was going to ask? There it is. A thought process, possible that when you get Fire Giant, when your team secures Fire Giant, and this doesn't have to be Arena, I guess this would be Conquest, that your minions, for I guess the next wave, get the fire minion buff that you would get from like taking a Phoenix down. What kind of things would that do, and would that be fun?
I've never really thought about that before, so I guess like immediately what's coming to mind is it could be a little bit awkward where it's like you've gotten it, but a wave has just spawned and I have to wait 30 seconds. Like I could see that happening. I could also see the argument of like that is just super snowbally. Now you have to deal with not only do they have Fire Giant, but they have fire waves. Yep. So I don't want to say like I'm overall like negative to the idea. Like I think it is a cool idea, and it's definitely like a way to make Fire Giant more rewarding. But is that a problem that Fire Giant's not rewarding enough already? And like, yeah, I guess that's like my main question is like, does that solve a problem, or is it just a cool thing to do?
Yeah. And if it doesn't solve a problem, does it introduce a problem, even if it is a cool thing to do?
That's the question.
Yeah, because I can see in Conquest where it could become a problem when you stack that as well. It almost feels like you're just kind of overshadowing the Oni Fury in a sense, because, the Oni Fury's there. Get it, your next wave is the enhanced one. Well, now if you somehow manage to take the fire and the Oni Furies up, you might try and beeline over towards
that
there.
Would be very
and now you have a fire Oni wave that's coming along in all three lanes when you're already in the lead.
Oh my god.
You get enhanced Fire Giant. Like I can see that. I think this person even clarified that they meant it kind of just for an arena. I could see maybe a cool idea, but yeah, I can see the cool aspect of it. I've always kind of thought that like, Fire Giant, Fire Minions makes sense, but yeah, I can see where some of the interest would be there.
What if Fire Giant just killed everyone on the enemy team and respawned your whole team and also got rid of their structures and their Titan?
And their
just won the game.
What if that was just the win?
Well, that was the thing at Odin's Onslaught, right? Was they had the Needhog up in the like middle of the map, and like killing it would basically win you the game, right? But a little bit different.
All right, these two back to back are really fun. And I'm sorry, production, if I get to them faster than y'all do. One is, what's the best sound effect in the game?
Gilgamesh kick.
I was legit about to say Gilgamesh dropkick. It is the most satisfying ability in the game to hear hit.
I don't know.
I know, right?
I don't know.
This is an impromptu like battle.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, there's a lot of gods, and each god has a lot of sounds.
Okay, another biased take for me is Charon's ult. It has that like kind of bell ring, and it's like very fun. I love that one.
Ra, I don't know if it's the sound effect, so I can't decide.
Right,
but like Ra ult makes me feel good. And I don't think it's because of the sound. I think it's because everything that I associate with the sound.
I think another one for me is Yamoja's bubble, like the bubble bounce, not the Moonblast after, just the bubble. That's just such a satisfying.
The Moonblast is just the
yeah, but it's just all boom, boom, boom. Like that's just such a fun sound. It's just such a fun one.
All right, Lermy. Here's another fun question for you.
Hit me.
What are the odds that one day we could sit down, you could just take a bunch of people, get a microphone, and they could vocally do a bunch of audio?
Do our own
and then like as an April Fool's prank.
It's not that hard.
Really?
Oh, that would be.
Oh my
Where's
god.
Kellen at? Like
Someone write this down. I want this. Look, April Fool's, April 1st, 2024.
Okay, get this dev team over here on
it would not be hard to do it locally. Actually
patch it
a
and actually
build
put it
and
out.
patch it. Yeah, putting it out for a lot of people would be
How
hard.
large of a patch would that be?
But
do every sound effect in
uncompressed
Smite.
audio for you.
Well, there's a lot of sound effects in the game. Let me tell you. Part of the process. Okay, I'm making this educational again. Here we go. All right. So
Education.
when we're in the process of making a new god, we have to come up with a temporary model and temporary like.
The temp icon is the best part. It's that little angry.
Yeah, he's
No,
like,
right?
yeah.
Good.
But that comes with sound effects, right? Because if we're testing a god with temp effects, of course they don't have final sound effects or anything like that.
Please tell me you're going to follow this up with you have to record temp of sound.
No.
Dang it.
But
I was so
so
excited.
we go through the library and
Release
we're
the
like,
Lermy cut.
what sound effect like could work here, but it's not too like similar to anything. Like that's like the question that we ask. Because it's usually like, okay, if I'm making, or like what was it with Charon ult? I took Giannis ult, but I took Giannis ult from a skin, so it didn't sound exactly like Giannis ult. It sounded similar to it, so it wasn't like, oh, I identify that immediately as Giannis ult. So it's like similar, like in that you get what the effect is doing, but not the same. And then there was a very funny story, actually. There was a god that we worked on. I forget which one it was. It was within like the past year. And to test out some like lobby sound effects, someone did like, they weren't sure how to put sound effects in the lobby. I forget, again, I forget who this was. But they put in a clip of their own voice when they turn on the god. And so you'd click on it and it would go, hey, hi, hello.
That's so good.
I want those. I want to. What dev build do I have to be on to get that? That's the one that I'm going to load into.
It freaked me out because I was like looking at it I was sitting in a meeting room by myself waiting for someone to come in, and then I was just scrolling through the client, looking at the god, and I opened it and I hear this like voice and I'm like, is someone in there? I look at my Discord, no one's there. I'm like, where is this coming from? I didn't associate it.
I'm gonna ask this one as well because this is always a fun question, even though it comes up a lot. But it's if you could choose if you could be a skin for any god in the game, what god are you choosing to be?
Ishtar.
That tracks for like a whole laundry list of reasons.
That is a good question.
Also, I want you to know I hadn't scrolled down, but someone did say Gilg drop drop kick is correct.
They're knowers.
So satisfying. Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Sorry to go back to that question.
I don't want to be Hebrew.
Surtur one.
Surtur one is also good.
Yeah.
Surtur one's
I think
good.
Billy said Xbalanque 3 on a minion wave is also very satisfying.
Oh yeah, it just like shoots out a bunch
all
of
the individual
darts.
darts.
Right?
That's good. Every time we come to this, like, who would, like, if you could be a skin for any god, I always go back and forth between like 3 gods. But like the 2 that always come back are either Atlas and Sylvanas. Like those are like the 2 I go to, and I almost always lean more towards Sylvanas.
You want to be a little guy?
I want to be a little guy on a tree. You don't even got to change Grover at all. Just have me chilling up there, like Bob Ross style.
Yeah.
I've got my sound effect.
Okay.
Thor basic attack, but specifically at Worlds.
Oh yeah, the base boost with it.
Anything Thor at Worlds.
Anything Thor at Worlds just feels so good.
Hype.
We hype it up not because like Thor is a hype god, but because his sound effects just like
I don't care.
shake
You
the
could
stadium.
you could be awful. I just want to hear it.
You just got to hear it.
As long as I'm not casting. If I'm casting, make it look good.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not up there, just make it sound cool. That inspired. RIT Josh said that they liked Thor Hammer when you teleport to it, and I was like, damn, Thor is real good on that.
Yeah, he has good sounds.
Thor is pretty good.
Do you have a god that you'd like want to be a skin for?
I mean, Charon would be pretty cool, right? Just to be on the boat,
surfing.
picking up some money,
I like that's the better thought process of when I was like, I want to be Hebrew, and it's like you just did that, but with less of a middleman. Like I want to be this god, but specifically match this skin.
That's a good one.
Now I'm scrolling through. Sorry, I got to catch up. I sat on those questions for so long. Chat's been zooming. Let's see. No, I'm not gonna. We're not spoiling anything about upcoming
spoils,
patches.
Yeah, no spoils.
I just can't have like,
We've
is this god gonna get buffed and or
10.8.
nerfed?
The next update show is right around the corner, y'all.
Spoiler for an update: there's going to be a god having a number changed on them.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Ooh, yeah.
Oh my god.
And
Maybe 2.
there might even
If we're
be,
getting crazy.
Eventually, there might be more gods added to the game.
No.
No, I thought we were stopping here. I thought.
It's all done. Sorry, guys.
We're
done.
This
No
is our
more.
bit.
Man,
Hit the magic number and it's over now.
I see a bunch of like, I want to be. Oh, someone said Maui Bubble TP is a good one.
Oh yeah, that's good.
The little pop at the end?
I've
Yeah.
not been on the receiving end of the teleport. I've always been the one who
You've
throws
been the
it out.
Maui.
Right, yeah.
'Cause I love me some Maui.
I have a Maui moment. It was in a playtest that we had, and I guess it's fine to say this because it's technically not in the game anymore. But I remember we were doing a Maui playtest. It was the first time I got to touch the god. I built like full CDR on him, and all of a sudden, at one point, you were able to have 2 of them out at a time.
Oh,
and I
yes,
remember we
I
got to the
remember
end of the playtest, and I was like, "All right, so how do you like the guy? How do you feel?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's really cool getting to throw a couple of bubbles around at Phoenixes." I had like all these people bouncing around. I just went, "Yeah, that's probably not something that we should."
Like about that. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, community, if you wanted to have 2 Maui bubbles. I'm the reason you're not allowed to have that
Oh,
anymore
bubbles.
because of my
Oh,
shenanigans.
one bubble.
J-Mac, Why'd you have to?
I ruined
everything?
such a good thing. If
Why'd you have to
I didn't
ruin
say anything,
everything?
that might have been a thing. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry to me. That's a fun
I'm
guy.
gonna paraphrase this one, but it's just bringing back like 2v2v2 and like some of those other game modes where like it's the oblong numbers where or like you don't just have two teams. And any conversations around those that have been going on or like
tough.
sprinkling hints?
Because I'm a big fan of those modes. I love them. They're just so much fun to grind and play. The problem with it is that it has matchmaking concerns and it has UI concerns. Especially with the new HUD coming through this year. It was not a feature that we included at this point in time to have the multi-team setup in a HUD, in the new HUD at least. And because we have the parity with the old HUD and the new HUD, and we have to make sure that at least they're mirrored in what they do, and except for a couple features that are unique to the new HUD. So, if that is not a thing, we cannot do those modes at the end of the day.
Simple enough. I remember, and you've been here long enough that you probably remember this conversation coming up. There was a long time ago that 10v10 arena kept getting floated around, and literally it was the same issue where it's just like, this is a matchmaking nightmare to try and make work, and then to conceptually put that in like a match of the day or something maybe that doesn't have as like a high a population. Good luck, right?
Yeah.
Man, I remember
it was an interesting time.
I remember the old raid boss modes people were on where there was the time where you could put 9 people on a team together against 1 in a custom, so like everybody joins and everyone just quickly floods the other side. Those were some of the most chaotic things. It was basically just what god can I win in a
Let's
1
play the
versus
game.
9?
How do we crash Smite servers?
How do we absolutely
did
break
that
this
though.
game?
Remember the zombies?
Oh my God,
that was so
zombies.
close to breaking in that one game where they all got piled up together, and the spectator was lagging, and I was like, "This is it.
like,
It's over. It's over."
Everything's gonna die now.
Somebody did mention, and I gotta throw it as a shout as a potential cursed thing in chat, which is make a Sylvanas skin, but it's Grover on top of Sylvanas instead.
I don't think the
would
rig
be-
would work very well.
Like imagine just like trying to
That's
texture
one of those-
Grover as Sylvanas and opposite. That'd be so
Didn't
cursed.
we,
So
there was
funny.
like a tweet that went out that was like, I think it was Aphrodite or Neith on a bunch of different skeletons.
Yeah, it was a
yes.
video.
And they did one that was
It an April
Cthulhu, and
Fool's
that
video.
was like nightmare
Oh,
fuel.
Cthulhu doing
Yeah.
the
It would be,
dance too.
it's another one of those tweets whenever those come.
Yeah.
It's just cursed images.
Swapping the textures is a lot harder than swapping the meshes and the rigs. That's just like, you can just swap those super easily. But the texture is like actually hard painted, so you would have to go into the texture and move those bad boys around, and it would be very awkward to remap, to say the least.
So this one came up. Thunder Rage skin for Thor, right? Do you have any more ideas of own brands to like make into skins? And while you have a moment to think, I'm gonna go ahead and put the one that I always suggest in this moment: Zeus, where he is just an energy drink.
So we have an
Falls in the
energy drink
exact
already.
same-
We got Thunder
you just,
Rage.
but then you've got
now he's
two.
like a smoothie or something like that.
Yeah, Zeus juice can be whatever.
Protein
It could be a
shake.
protein shake.
Protein
yeah, there we
shake.
go.
There we go.
Yeah.
And then we need obviously like a Baron's brew.
Baron's
right?
Brew's
He would
sick, yeah.
need to be another drink. Things like that.
Yeah.
Do you have any brands in your mind, Lermy?
I mean, we have Loki Charms, right? We could do like more cereal.
Good.
We have Cuckoo Puffs.
Yeah, we have
We have
Cuckoo
Cuckoo
Puffs,
Puffs.
I forgot we did.
Right? We
We have so many good skins.
Cthulhu.
Cthulhu, yeah.
Oh, that one's free. You just agreeing with those? You have like your own
I didn't
Isaiah
even
brand.
realize we have a cereal skin line. Like,
Oh,
I
we
just thought
kinda
of
do,
it. That's
yeah.
nice.
That's what 3
Right?
of them?
How many? I was gonna say we need 2 more cereal skins before
Right.
we can have a full cereal skin to match
Aaron's
up.
Crisps.
Charon's
Crisps.
Crisps. There
Instead
we
of his
go.
coins.
And
Aron Crisps.
each box comes with a gold chocolate
Oh,
coin.
There you go.
You gotta find the
Perfect.
coin inside the
There you
box.
go. I think we have another one lined up that maybe is going to be, we'll see. Oh yeah, what made y'all decide on bringing starters back to Joust?
So I had a little clumsy preamble on the patch notes yesterday about it. But basically, we heard from the community that they did not really like this kind of slow start they felt was happening in Joust. And that is just what happens when you take away a very cost-efficient stat stick or, passive stick for a lot of different characters. So we wanted to kind of improve that early game experience and give people something to build for the late game. So that was one reason. But then we went back to the original reason why I removed them in the first place, which was they are somewhat problematic in terms of providing a lot of fodder for a tank meta, because support start items are, okay, this is my personal opinion flowing in a little bit, okay, here, so take it with a grain of salt. I think starter items for supports are the most broken starter items in the game.
They're real
100%.
good.
They are
No, I
so
agree
good.
as a support.
They are so OP, and it makes me very sad when I see a support in my game not build a support starter item in any game mode. If I see no war flag in my arena, I'm like, what's going on? Where my war flag at?
My favorite item.
But anyway, that is the biggest reason that we had to keep those guys disabled, is because they give you a lot of gold spooling, which is very good. It gives you sustain in the lane, which some of the other items that still exist do, like, Tainted Steel is another one that's a really good option that I think people will go for as tanks. Warrior's Axe, also really good for that purpose, and Sigil as well. Still lots of good tank options, but none that are upgrade at level 15 and give you a lot of free gold. That can be problematic, but still adding the fun back in for everybody else.
Keep it. That's the important part.
Yeah.
Fun for everybody. Because God help you when it's just you.
It also helps me, a pleb who goes into Joust and doesn't know what to build first, since I don't have a starter available to me. It's like, I don't know what to do.
I never used to struggle with that, and for some reason, like late, and it always happens like halfway through the season where I'll venture into some other game mode. Like I'll play Assault, and I'll sit there for a moment like, I can buy
Assault's unique too, because you're level 5 with 3k.
Yeah, I'm like, I can get just a full item.
Right? Yeah.
What do I do with this power? like what do I unlock here?
I've gotten flamed before whenever I'd streamed on Smite game, because Assault and Arena, like my typical go-tos on Smite game, you only got a few hours to play, just kind of have a little bit of fun.
See, I do Conquest because I only have a few hours
It's the one I kind of like turn my brain off and just talk to chat more. But somebody flamed me one time for the build that I go whenever I do mages, which I get my starter, I build tier 2 towards Chronos Pendant, which I can go into 3 different options, and then I get tier 1 towards Flat Pen, so I don't have a full item with starter, but I have 3 items that give me almost equal power. So I can pass it. Someone's like, that's such an inefficient build. I'm like, no, it's not, because now I had 600 or 700 gold that was sitting around. Now I've used that gold for something valuable.
You want the actual secret strat though?
Oh no.
So when I'm playing Assault,
oh, here we go.
When I'm playing Assault, if I'm playing a mage, it's usually going to be Sands of Time, and Pythax piece is a good option.
Ooh,
but you could also go tier 2 into like a Chronos Pendant or something, and then get tier 1 Earring, and you don't run out of mana,
MP5, true.
ever. That's another thing that I really like to do, but also for hunters, I'm a big Griffin Wing stan. I
feel like something just got unlocked for me, dude.
That was actually something I pointed out.
So different.
That was something I noticed on stream. I got in and I noticed like every hunter I played with was going starter item plus Griffin Wing. I'm sitting here going, did Griffin Wing get a shadow buff that I don't know about? Like, what's going on? And everybody was like, no, it's just the extra MP5 you get from it plus this. I'm like, you know what? That's actually really smart, because like the item itself might not be as good as some of the other options, but the fact you can go starter plus it, I'm like, it all makes sense now.
You know what else is really good in that mode that I don't see enough?
War flag?
Well, yes, but Talisman of Energy. Talisman of Energy.
War flag plus Talisman.
Is so good, because Talisman of Energy gives you more MP5 than Heartward Amulet. It gives you attack speed. It gives you movement speed. It gives you all those things, and you're all in the lane, so everybody gets it. It's so good in that mode. I'm just saying.
And then you double it with War flag, and you essentially like double dip it. It's so much fun.
If you're a tank, you should buy Talisman. That's all I'm saying.
Emperor's Armor goes bird too.
Emperor's too.
That's good. I get that like second item. You know,
Talisman
it's
and
not
Emperor's.
that helpful at the beginning, because that's really like the sustained time, right, where you need to worry about that. The first time you die, you come back, and then you're chilling with that.
And you're chilling with it. We've got 3 of these that I've mentioned. Well, like similar concepts, so I'm combining them into one. But because you had mentioned zombies earlier, any more plans for like PvE stuff that we've seen in the past?
It is so fun. I love like just being able to be creative with that kind of thing. But the problem is, you can do that in a closed environment, but when you open it up to, thousands of hundreds of people playing it in that way, it will break. It will break really quickly.
Can you imagine just like tens of thousands of matches of zombies happening all at one time?
So
the servers would be.
Yeah, I can imagine. It turns into the queue while you're waiting for the game to come back up.
Yeah, only one match can be live at one time.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But yeah, to get back to the question, it is a very complicated process to make PvE modes, because it is just you versus some AI. And that AI is very difficult to actually get right sometimes. So we want to make sure that if we ever do more PvE, that we're feeling like, okay, not only is this going to actually function and that it's not going to, crash people's games, cause, server instance failures or things like that. We need to just make sure that it is polished, it is nice, it is neat, and most importantly, it's fun, right? So we have to keep a lot of things in mind in case of those things coming up, which, they always do find their way into the discussions about that. So I will not say never. I will say it is a lengthy challenging process to ever make them happy.
Especially, and because I've seen a lot of people accompany like PvE, and then of course they always talk about the adventures, right?
Yeah.
That come up. And I remember a lot of the discussions around those were it's a lot of manpower and work to go into a PvE event that, depending on how popular it is, you either have like a massive queue and everyone's lining up for it, and that kills some of the other queues, or nobody's in it, and then it's kind of back and forth. PvE is also just weird to work with sometimes since the game's like PvP oriented.
Yeah, it's not necessarily built around that. So what would happen before is that the systems that keep you in Smite, like the Worshippers and the XP and all of that other, like those systems are built for PvP basically. That is where you will continuously get those extra like carrots on a stick basically to go and say come like play more. But you can run out of those really quickly in PvE, and that tended to happen a lot with the adventures, is where they would be really, really popular for like the first week, and then they'd fall off a cliff. And then very few people would be in there. It would take a long time to get matches going. It was just not the most successful feeling in the world. So if we want to do a PvE experience in the future,
it's going to be Smite Part 2. Oh, I thought that's where she was going with that. I thought we were on the exact same page.
But yeah, it's understandable why people want it, because it is fun. It's so much fun. But the reason it's fun is because a lot of really hard work went into making it really, really clean and polished.
Those, I mean, it was literally an entire team, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was not just like, hey, we made a new god, and as a side project, we decided to throw this in there. It's like, no, we've got like 7 people that are like,
that's
this
their
is their
job. Yeah.
like 8 hours they come in every day to make this and craft it, and that just gets real heavy.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
To get it working. Now, and everyone can correct me if I'm wrong, because I saw someone say, when's 2v2 going to be added? And I'm sure they mean like as a permanent mode, but isn't there like a 2v2 match
Every
of the day?
Tuesday.
Joust
2v Tuesdays.
Joust the two of us.
Yeah, there's Joust the two of us, and Dual Siege, I think, are the two 2v2
We have
modes.
there's one called like Till Death Do Us
Oh
Part
yes,
2.
till death.
Oh,
is so
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
That one I love. The randomness is just like, it's a nice little touch.
There's something about random.
I'm glad I remembered
And
properly.
then you get like infinite and all-out assault, where you like have 5 seconds. Look, here's my not actual hot take. If you're playing infinite assault or all-out assault, where you can all pick and have as many of a single character, if your team is not all 5 of one character, you are playing the mode wrong. You are playing the mode wrong. Like, I can see you doing like,
probably the one who's ruined that. I mean, hell, you did it. We did that earlier when we were playing, and we said just put it on random. None of us wanted to think.
yeah, we kind of made a pseudo version of that. No, that's like so much fun. You get, like, you 5 Najas, and you just like get a.
Oh my god.
It sounds mean, but you get to bully
Naja.
one person and take them up.
5 Tuskies,
I-
5 Morgans,
Yeah.
5 Herons, 5 Martys. There's
I actually found out that 2 Najas can take the same person up to deal damage at the same time in modes like that.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Because it's an interaction you only get if you have like the Morrigan in your game normally.
Yeah, we
But if
tend to
if you ult the same person at the same
look
time,
out for
you
those,
jump up.
But yeah, sometimes weird interactions will happen in those. Like there used to be an interaction with Ares where his 2 would stack with other Ares's, and you would just have infinite HP 5, basically infinite protections. You'd all be cats. And we were like,
What is-
oh,
That's the
like-
world I want to live in.
Would
only
that be
when
like
I'm them.
what, 60% CCR too, with the buff that's going
Yeah,
through?
it's a lot.
Oh man.
So yeah, we gotta look out for those things sometimes. It's something that comes up in our like smoke testing. Is when we go through and like make sure that things just aren't unbelievably busted.
Someone said 4 Cthulhu's and 1 Horus is peak fun, by the way, to agree with you.
Okay.
Okay.
I think a 4-1 is fine.
Yeah,
I can accept the 4-1.
Right,
You're
yeah.
still okay.
But if you're doing
like
like
a facilitator to fun, yeah.
But if you're loading into like Infinite Assault to play 5 completely different gods to play the most optimal like winning one, like you're not playing the mode for fun anymore. You're trying too hard. Like, it's match of the day.
Laramie, I'm going to hijack a question to take a shot at my wife specifically, but why'd you buff Neith? I can't get her to stop playing her already, and now she's going to be good.
Oh man.
And other ability hunters, they've been struggling, man.
They have been.
Tank buster type characters where you've got a lot of attack speed, are able to use those chins procs. They're just really good right now, man. So we're trying to give a little bit of love back to the ability hunters, and Neith is like the pinnacle of ability hunters, right? She can function as a basic attack character. It's not, necessarily the way that I would recommend going, but if you really want to go that way, you can. Yeah. But now it's even better than ever to go ability Neith.
I've been seeing an ability Artemis build going around that's apparently pretty nuts. I'm not going to spill the tea for people who are using it, but I've heard that it's insane.
It's the next big thing.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to break it here, but it's the next big
Right.
thing. I also want to ask, and this is just because he stands out, because I've seen him on Twitter a lot. I'm sure you've had to deal with this as much. Raven conversations. Like, how difficult has Raven been to you?
It's tough, right? Because we had a very long discussion with our initial nerfs of the direction that we wanted to go, and it wasn't universally disliked, but it felt that way. You know, it felt like any discussion about Raven was, why didn't you guys do the obvious thing? And that was understandable. You know, we did talk about doing the obvious thing, but the reason that we landed somewhere else was because of a bunch of various reasons that I'm sure if you read the Reddit post from Clumsy, it goes into a little bit. So we just wanted to, you know, kind of still give him a little bit of this unique identity, and it just felt like, you know, we don't want that. And you know, okay, understandable. If you guys actually don't want that, then we will change it. You know, we hear your feedback. We are keeping an eye out for you, so definitely understandable. If you don't like something, please speak up for sure. But I will say that the discussion around it was a little tough to read, you know, because you know how people on the internet can be sometimes. Yeah. It's just the internet. You know, you can say anything, and there are very few repercussions for it. So when one thing that I do want to just make a request to the community is that when you see a balance point, we spend days thinking about it. We spend days testing it. It's not just
you're paid to do it. Like it's not like
it's not something that comes up at the drop of a hat, you know. So definitely consider those things and how we got to that point, and
remember there are people behind the names. That's a real big deal.
Just be nice.
Some of y'all are mean.
Be constructive. It's fine if you have critical feedback, but you know, provide some options, alternatives. Don't just rage a little bit, you know.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is I think it's definitely okay to provide alternatives. The one thing that I do want to say about that is that sometimes people will come up with ideas and then they'll get really stuck in them, you know? Yeah. And sometimes that is understandable, you know, sometimes that is a thing that we will end up doing because it just feels like the right thing to do. But, you know, again, with this Raven situation, it was like, oh, it's obvious, just decrease the shield. And we were like, well, if we do that, he's going back to where he was, you know, that whole thing. It's like, well, people probably don't want that. And we just assumed wrong in that case. Yeah. You know, that happens. We will not be perfect with balance ever, but that's just balance in general. You can't have a balanced game. It's impossible.
The fact that it's as good as it is now is actually really impressive. Like, honestly, it's like spinning a plate, except you're spinning 100 some odd different plates. All of those plates also are spinning 4 plates in abilities, I guess 5 plates on top of that, which are each spinning their own little plates. And
then at the very bottom of that plate spinning is one Morrigan saying, ha, here's the second hand spinning all those exact same plates.
Always fun. Someone asked, and I don't know if I feel like this would have been in a patch notes if it had happened, but have the healing tiers been reworked recently for Assault? And they're kind of wondering, like, why are some gods not considered healers? And their example was Shiva.
They were reworked, I want to say 2 patches.
I think it was on the Souls
for
drop.
The healers who only heal in their ultimates.
Yeah.
Yes, it was, I think it was Shiva and it was Cthulhu that got removed, and then Isiah moved up a tier to tier 2. And that has to do specifically with data. But for instance, with the 3 tiers of healing, you know, you pretty much feel like if you as a Cthulhu are up against another character in tier 3, let's just say Oleron.
Yeah.
As Cthulhu, you're like, I'm not really a healer, bro. That's not the most fair thing.
Why aren't you ulting to heal me?
That was always kind of mine. Like, I love Assault. It's probably my go-to mode if I'm not playing like Conquest or something like that. Like for stream, Assault is like my number 1 go-to, and it always felt bad. I was like, I love playing Cthulhu. I like playing Shiva. I like playing these gods. And then I remember I'm in Assault, and I'm like, oh, there's a Baron on the other side. I'm not gonna be the healer. And so like the running gag with like a group is like, all right guys, I'm ready to it's time to heal up these Shiva numbers. All right guys, I got you to 300 HP. Hope you can live on that for the next 90 seconds.
Yeah, so that is why those 2 specifically got removed, and then Isiah of course got moved up. And again, to remind those of you who may have forgotten, the reason the tiers are there is they are divided by their statistical healing numbers and their general perception on how much they are healing. So for instance, characters that are under a certain threshold are not counted as healers, except for now Shiva and Cthulhu, because of just how bad that was feeling, right? So you'd load into a game, you'd not have a good time like J-Mac was describing, and we just don't want that experience to be happening anymore. Even though they statistically are healing just as much as your Oleruns, your Cupids, whatever, they it's just not the same feeling.
This is where we don the old man moment and say, you don't know how good you have it. Back in my day, it was true random.
Man,
you'd be lucky if you got a healer at all.
Some people actually prefer the
I remember, I think my favorite iteration was the class balance. So like if you got 3 warriors and 2 guardians, we also got 3 warriors, 2 guardians. That was like one of the OG forms of Assault. whether you had a healer in all of that, wasn't calculated in, but it was like whatever classes you got, we got, so that way we didn't just get quote unquote class diffed.
Yeah.
Now I'm afraid I'm going to steal some of the thunder in how I approach this question, but someone was asking, like, especially I'm looking at like non-conquest god changes. Afro nerf was at the top. They've said it a couple of times, so I'm going to do them the favor and ask about Afro nerfs and just kind of like why Aphrodite's getting hit. Normally it's because, especially non-conquest, normally that's hey, they don't do that great, or they're doing okay in the main mode, but everywhere else they're like way too strong, so we're bringing them down. So what kind of numbers, I guess that's maybe too specific, what kind of things went into some of the non-conquest god changes?
Yeah, so it's a couple of specific things. We have a chart specifically for conquest versus non-conquest modes where it has a point on the graph where they are in conquest and a point on the graph where they are in non-quest. Non-quest. And so how those 2 points relate to each other, whether it's going up and to the right or going down and to the left, or like which direction that is, will tell us how much better they are in which mode, right? So you're like, okay, which are characters that have this specific orientation that we're looking for? Okay, here's our list. What is the most common complained about characters that we see having to play against? Aphrodite, unfortunately, is one of them. So she...
Always.
Yeah,
always.
That's just a fact of Smite at this point, is, even if the character, which, again, she was in a place where she was doing better in non-conquest than in conquest, and combined with that perception of the players that go, oh my god, I'm playing against an Aphrodite, that's the reason why we decided to go for that character. The reason that we went for the cooldowns in particular was because the way that she works, especially with the cooldown refreshes on her 3, that was not going to be the most impactful change for her, especially on her like main cooldowns. But we understand that there is definitely feedback that, our Afro players love playing Afro. They're probably one of the highest amount of mains on a single character out there, right? That's just what you see the most. You see Afros with hundreds of stars, So we hear the feedback. We are keeping an eye on it, and we are considering further action. We don't know which way it's going to go as of yet, but we definitely see it.
There's the other half of being a live game, right? Is like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? Sometimes either it's, hey, we made the right choice and we can see we made the right choice, or sometimes it's like, we thought this was the right direction. Oops. And now we're going to go and to, like you said, I think earlier, when you're looking at a lot of the numbers, you can say, hey, you were talking about Robin. That's what it was, where you can say, hey, this is like where we think it should go and where we think is best. Most of the time, that is a very well-guided path. Sometimes we step off and hit a tree. And so sometimes you just got to stay on. I don't know why tree. I was thinking of like a bicycle. And so, yeah, that's just where that went. It was a really weird analogy.
Like a can of eggs.
But yeah, so in general...
Things can be changed.
Yes, it can be
Both
changed.
positively and negatively.
And we want to see where the data goes, right? Because the way that her win rate will change from this patch to next patch is going to tell us how hard these affected her. Because we still feel confident that she should receive a non-conquest nerf. We just are considering the extent of that nerf.
Was it too heavy-handed, not heavy-handed enough, things like that.
With so the data will tell us which way we shall go. So
always turn to the numbers.
Yes.
It always works out that well. I'm kind of curious, when you added non-conquest god changes, how was that a pain, or is it just a Dropbox?
that was
I've asked enough questions okay.
So adding it all together was a new ask for programming, because we had to have a whole new section basically on each god to say, does this god have non-conquest balance? Okay, apply these effects to them in these particular modes. Now when I go to add it, it's very simple, and I can just say, okay, this is a non-conquest balance change. Okay, I set the icon. Okay, I set the description, and then I just put in the numbers, and then it's done, right? Doesn't have to do anything. It applies to all modes. It just is great, and that just goes huge shout out to our programming team for making it so easy for us to do. But yeah, at this point, it's very easy to make those changes. It's not like I have to go and be like, programming, can you change all these numbers for me, please? I can do it myself in like 10 minutes, flat.
This question, I'm thinking I'm reading it in a way, it feels like it's in the same vein of the all chat questions, which is like, why don't we have all chat? And that's because people can be mean. Yeah. But they took it to a different level, which would be a voice chat. All chat.
Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine? I think I'm going to assume
that
they mean... well, it says with everyone. I don't know. That seems like it would also be a kind of programming nightmare.
Well, so we have that in ranked. You can do that in ranked.
Yeah.
It does not happen in casuals.
Yeah.
Because in general, we used curse voice for a long time,
Yep.
right? And that was something that came up, and I can tell you from experience that, you know, sometimes those curse voice lobbies were a little bit cursed, you might say.
I just didn't join on purpose.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yo, your teammates are in curse. I'm like, no, man, I'm gonna go join my mumble. I'm gonna talk to people that are not here.
Right.
We'll jump in raid call
So-
real quick.
in ranked, it feels a little bit more constructive because it's the mode where you guys are trying to win. You're making tactical call-outs. It's a lot less of that just like kind of jabber about whatever.
Yeah.
In casuals, it's a little bit less like that. You're probably not going to have that very structured like discussion about, okay, guys, I'm going to dive the arena fountain right now. And
Beads up in 3 minutes.
Right, yeah.
Stuff like
it's
that.
not that kind of same.
I'm gonna be asking like, hey man, did you see Barbie? Like,
Right.
you know, like, what'd you do this weekend? I've never met you before.
So that's a big reason why it's only in ranked, is because we are worried, especially with past experiences, of like what kind of, you know, bad experiences could this create for players. So we do limit it to parties and ranked, as far as I understand.
Now, someone said, random question, but a sincere one. Has a game mode ever been considered in regards to a capture the flag idea? And I feel like
We had captured the
We had
flag.
to.
yeah, that's what I thought, right? I was just like,
Nike
I
That
was
was
like
the first
sitting
ever
here and-
adventure.
That was the, what, 3v3v3, I think is what it was?
No, it was
No.
5v5.
Oh, no, that's right. It was
Yeah.
5v5.
Nike's Valley of Victory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nike
That's right.
Valley.
I remember it was the Nike one. But you also only had a limited god pool. to
Yeah,
choose
limited
from.
God pool just to make sure that the teams were always
Because
balanced.
then,
Yeah.
like, imagine a capture the flag game where you could like just choose a global guy and then you're
Yeah.
on.
You just
Be
grab,
honest with the
Yeah.
flag real
you just
quick.
grab Heimdall and just boop, boop, done.
Dude, that was an actual problem that came up during the Odin's Onslaught, was that we would have people that would pick Heimdall in playtest and teleport the flag because, you know, all you'd have to do is put down your teleporter, and like even though you couldn't cast new abilities, it was already out.
Yeah,
you
you
were
already
still
cast
good.
it.
That's
fine.
so good, though.
So, yeah, little too good. Same with Jingwei. That also happened.
That would be so obnoxious. Because then you just bounce their fountain and you get
Yep.
the passive.
It worked in any of the bases. It was there were some of them
Yeah.
that were like, we kind of for balance sake, we kind of have to get rid of these guys.
What about, and this is like, so I know we've had, you know, capture the point game modes, and like it's called, what did we call it? It had cool Egyptian art.
Domination.
Domination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mind kept wanting to say Dominion. I'm like, there's no way, that doesn't make any
Right.
sense. Why would it be called Dominion? Domination. Are there any other game modes like that? Like, how often do new game modes, I guess, come up?
We have ideas frequently, but it's all about the timing, right? And like what kind of way that we can actually implement it.
Make
Like
it
how
happen.
do we actually make this happen? This idea of reality. And then sometimes you have ideas that sound really cool on paper, and then you try them and you're like, oh, this has problems.
This is a bad.
So it is tough because
Yeah.
making new modes is always so much fun, but there's a lot of concerns that come with it in terms of the matchmaking, you know, dividing up the player population more. All of those things have to be considered, and that's not even to get into the actual technicality of making it, creating the map, creating the rules, all of the programming things that go into it. It's just a very big task, and that's not to say that, again, we would never add things, right? It's never a never,
Yeah.
but
It's
just know
how much
that
work has to go
Yes,
into.
just know that these things would need to be planned out a year
These
plus
things
in
take
advance,
time,
basically.
you know?
Yeah.
They gotta. I lost the word. It's
think it's
gone.
time for
Sorry,
Gore to go
guys.
home.
Yeah, you know what? Well, that is actually
It's been a
where
long
we're
day
at.
for you, Gore.
It's not even, dude. It is time though, which is probably where my brain was at. I think gestate was the word I was going to go to, but that just didn't feel
No,
right.
that's not right.
Yeah. So that's it. We're ending on that
We're
note.
done.
You know what? Sweetland Deer said Smite Cart was awesome. That's a positive
was.
note. We'll end on that.
we
Smite Cart
go.
was awesome. Thank you, Lermy. And of course, Isiah, for coming and joining us. Thank you,
Absolutely.
J-Mac, for hanging out with me throughout the day. And stay tuned if you're watching live, because there's going to be a streamer right after this.
Yay!